They didn't bench a quarterback, they surrendered. What happened inside the Cleveland Browns facility this week wasn't just a football decision, it was a complete organizational collapse. A power struggle snapped in half by public pressure, media heat, and a fan base that finally forced ownership's hand. On paper, Sanders being named QB1 might look like your average preseason story. But if you think this is just about talent or depth charts, you're missing the bigger picture by miles. This is a franchise with a history of broken promises and shattered helmets, a coaching staff pushed to their limit, a veteran quarterback humiliated in silence, another walking out, and a rookie who's never started a regular season NFL game, being handed the keys to save an entire city. Behind the scenes, ulterior motives, corporate panic, trade rumors, team meetings turning into showdowns, and a fan base foaming at the mouth for someone, anyone, to believe in again. And yet, somehow, the Browns think this is the right move. But why now? Why him? What don't they want you to see behind this sudden announcement? Because as we dig deeper into internal rebellion, locker room division, and the billion-dollar gamble no one saw coming, you'll realize this moment was never about football. It was about power. And what happens this Saturday could change everything. The announcement came quietly. Too quietly. Thursday afternoon, during what should have been just another routine press conference, Kevin Stefanski stepped to the podium with a folder of prepared remarks and nothing left to fight for. Standing before the cameras, he read the words everyone suspected were coming, but no one believed would actually arrive this soon. After thorough evaluation throughout camp and the preseason, we've determined Sanders gives us the best opportunity moving forward. Each word was chosen with surgical precision, not a syllable more than necessary. Every sentence scrubbed by PR, every pause calculated. It wasn't an announcement, it was a surrender. And in that moment, one of the most polarizing quarterback controversies in recent franchise memory came to a head. But this wasn't just Stefanski naming a starting quarterback. This was something deeper, something louder, an explosion wrapped in monotone delivery. Because if you've been following this saga from draft night, you already know Sanders wasn't supposed to be here this early. 5th round pick, unpolished, underrated, unwanted by half the front office, until now. So how did he leapfrog not one but two quarterbacks seemingly ahead of him on the depth chart? How does a rookie with barely a taste of NFL action get the job over a Super Bowl winner? And a third-round project the team was supposedly investing in? Simple, because the pressure was no longer avoidable. Sources close to the team say this wasn't Stefanski's choice. In fact, it might not have even been his wording. From the very start, the head coach had resisted this shift. He wanted more time, more preseason tape, more control. But time had run out, and Stefanski had lost control. By Thursday, ownership was done pretending. The demand came directly from the top: start Sanders or face the consequences. That message, according to insiders, was delivered in a 3-hour emergency meeting Wednesday night. Raised voices, red faces, water bottles slamming against wood. Jimmy Haslam didn't give suggestions. He issued an ultimatum: start Sanders or pack your office. The decision wasn't a reward, it was political warfare disguised as roster strategy. And make no mistake, this wasn't a spontaneous act of coaching intuition. It was the final step in a relentless buildup of pressure from every direction imaginable. Ticket holders threatening to cancel their seats, corporate sponsors calling in with concerns about public sentiment, even regional media quietly pressuring the franchise to do something to avoid an early season collapse before the season even began, and above all, a fan base completely done. Browns fans know quarterback chaos better than anyone. They've seen the flashes of promise, only to watch the jersey lettering peel off by mid-season. They're not impatient, they're loyal, but they're exhausted. And after watching yet another preseason blowout, this time the train wreck in Philadelphia, the calls began turning into torches. Bench Flacco. Cut Gabriel. Start Sanders, or we stop caring. It became organized chaos, social campaigns, memes, marches. One high-ranking source claimed over 1,000 season ticket cancellation requests hit the sales office in a single week. Sponsors threatening to pull contracts unless something changed. Whatever illusions of indecisiveness the Browns had been clinging to were destroyed. This wasn't just about who played quarterback. This was about public trust, about optics, about financial survival, on and off the field. So when Sanders was named the starter, it wasn't an elevation. It was a detonation. Behind Stefanski at that Thursday presser sat several staffers who didn't even try to hide their reactions. Some exchanged glances, others looked away completely. It's been reported the defensive coordinator rewrote significant portions of his game plan within hours of the announcement. The offensive staff didn't sleep, retooling protections and building new packages from scratch to fit Sanders' dual threat style. The building was buzzing, not with excitement but with uncertainty. Internally, the announcement didn't unify the team. It fractured the coaching hierarchy, triggered leadership questions, and stirred fresh tension across rooms already walking on eggshells. This wasn't named as QB1. This was installed. And yet, despite the pressure, the panic, the fractured support, Stefanski's team knows now it has no other option. Because whether it was fair or not, whether he was ready or not, Sanders had become the soul and the symbol of something larger than football. He was Cleveland's hope. And that's exactly what made this announcement so seismic. Not just that Sanders is QB1, but that the Browns stood before the NFL and admitted defeat to their own past. They acknowledged that the draft pedigree doesn't matter, that political capital won't save jobs, that seniority is no longer protection, that fan sentiment does matter, that waiting for maybe next year isn't good enough anymore. This was the first time in decades the Browns chose momentum over mediocrity. But momentum has no brakes, which means if Sanders fails, there's no one else to blame. Not the GM, not the locker room, not the fans, not even Flacco sitting with the clipboard. This is the bed ownership made. The question from here isn't whether Sanders deserved the job. The franchise already answered that, with pressure, with panic, and with a press conference delivered like a funeral speech. The real question now? Was the Browns' boldest quarterback decision in 25 years made too late or far, far too soon? What's often called a football decision was anything but. Because while Monday through Friday looked like training camp, behind the scenes, the Browns looked more like a company in crisis, not a team preparing for the regular season. And at the center of that crisis was one name, Sanders. He wasn't just the backup quarterback. He had somehow become a lightning rod for everything wrong and everything possible in Cleveland. And the fuse, it had been burning for weeks. Ever since that disastrous preseason game in Philadelphia, the one where the team didn't just get beaten, they collapsed. The pressure mounted by the hour. The offense was lifeless. Flacco looked lost. The backups looked worse. National media headlines weren't just critical, they were mocking. Local radio shows were throwing around the word unwatchable. By the time the team plane landed back in Cleveland, the front office had a different emergency on its hands. The fans were done. What started as Twitter memes turned into threads, pages deep. YouTube creators dissecting throws, TikTok accounts doing film breakdowns, Facebook groups creating petitions. The narrative had morphed from give Sanders a shot to bench Flacco or we break up with you. And then came the sponsors. Sources with internal access said multiple corporate partners reached out directly to team executives expressing discomfort. Some asked for sit-downs, others questioned the team's direction. One even paused negotiations for an upcoming sponsorship renewal, citing brand alignment concerns. Brand alignment, let that sink in. A sponsorship deal wasn't derailed by scandal or injury, but because a controversial quarterback decision made the brand look unfocused. When your depth chart starts hurting your business metrics, change isn't optional anymore, it's survival. And at that point, Sanders didn't just look like a football solution, he looked like a marketing solution. The sales office came first. The season ticket danger wasn't a rumor, it was on a spreadsheet. Hundreds of cancellation requests poured in. The ticket reps weren't doing seat upgrades, they were processing refunds. People didn't just want better football, they wanted to hold the organization accountable. And their wallets were loud. Fans weren't asking politely anymore. They were demanding. Either the Browns changed direction, or they were done. Some even took it further, emailing ownership directly, organizing message boards, local sports radio campaigns. By midweek, national media outlets had caught wind. Suddenly, the Browns weren't being covered as a team with an open QB competition. They were being profiled like a case study in organizational dysfunction. And that's when Jimmy Haslam stepped in. The Browns owner has never been shy about throwing his weight around behind the scenes, but according to multiple insider reports, it all boiled over on Wednesday night. Emergency meeting. 3 hours. Stefanski, Van Pelt, front office executives, legal, PR. And then, the moment that changed everything, Haslam, reportedly furious, slams his palm on the table and says plainly, "Start Sanders or I find another staff who will." That was it. That was the break. No more politics. No more committee meetings. No more, let's see how the rest of camp goes. The quarterback depth chart had been updated, not by a coach, but by an owner. And that kind of move doesn't just shift a roster. It shifts the culture. Word inside the building spread fast. Coaches stunned, players divided. One veteran reportedly told a team reporter, "I get the move, but the way it happened? That's not how good franchises do business." Still, the energy changed, because no matter how the locker room felt about the process, the result was what fans wanted. Sanders as QB1 wasn't just a line on a press release. It was oxygen for a fan base that had waited years to breathe again. The next 48 hours turned Cleveland into a city under siege, but in the best way possible. Upper deck tickets for the Rams game became gold-tier assets. Typically selling for $10-15 during the preseason, they broke $250 by Friday morning. For a preseason game, third-party sellers couldn't keep up. Merchandise staff were already burnt out. Number 2 jerseys sold out overnight, not just in adult sizes, but youth. Orders backed up. Fulfillment centers overwhelmed. Even the team's own online store crashed Thursday evening amid traffic spikes that mirrored a postseason surge. It wasn't just momentum, it was a movement. And companies noticed. Within 48 hours, Sanders had become a magnet for attention. Apparel brands, sports drink endorsements, media outlets fighting for exclusives. One team insider joked that the Browns' marketing department was putting him on more stuff than the team logo. Suddenly, Sanders wasn't just a player, he was a brand, a storyline, a symbol. And the stakes, they skyrocketed. Because what happens when you grant the public's wish and it doesn't work? Everything falls harder. Stefanski knows it. The staff knows it. Sanders, guaranteed, knows it too. Because now, every mistake becomes proof the organization bowed too early. Every incompletion validates the critics. Every pick justifies the doubt. But that's what pressure does. It doesn't just change who you start. It changes what failure means. If Joe Flacco had flopped 3 times in a row to start the season, it's business as usual. If Sanders flops in his debut, it's code red. But the reality is this: the Browns never had a choice. And if you look deeper, you'll realize the pressure wasn't just from outside the building. Quietly, slowly, it came from within. Offensive players started requesting packages designed around Sanders. Receivers lobbied for a shot to connect with him. Even special teams saw a morale shift when he was with the ones. Whether the coaches admitted it or not, they were feeling it too. And when players start moving around like one guy is the guy, it's only a matter of time before the staff, the structure, and finally the franchise catch up. All ownership did was hit fast forward. And now, the clock's ticking louder than ever. The depth chart changed with one sentence. But inside the building, the aftershock was just getting started. Because while the fans were celebrating and the media was exploding, behind closed doors, the Cleveland Browns' locker room was splitting at the seams. The veterans, they saw it coming before anyone else. In fact, by the time Stefanski made his carefully worded announcement at Thursday's press conference, Sanders had already won them over. Quietly, gradually, through every team meeting and every rep in camp, he'd started pulling the room toward himself. One offensive lineman was overheard saying, "We were just waiting for the coaches to catch up to what we already knew." And not long after the official news broke, several players, who usually dodge interviews like tackles, started chiming in with very specific support. "We finally have a direction," said one wide receiver. Another added, "The energy's different when he's in the huddle. People listen." Even defensive starters, guys whose relationships with the offense are usually limited to practice reps and trash talk, began acknowledging a shift was happening. One veteran safety summed it up best. For the first time, all camp were moving forward instead of sideways. Those words weren't innocent. They were loaded, because hidden beneath that quote is frustration. Weeks of frustration. Players fed up with rotations, indecision, and what they saw as artificial quarterback competition. Many had believed this move should have happened sooner. That week after week, the player performing the best wasn't the one getting the reps. So when it finally happened, it wasn't a surprise. It was relief. But not everyone felt the same way. Just a few lockers down, the mood among quarterbacks told a very different story. Joe Flacco, the veteran, the voice, the Super Bowl champ, appeared composed. Publicly, he congratulated Sanders. Privately, though, sources say he was stung, not angry, but deeply disappointed. And who could blame him? One off-season ago, he was brought in to be the steady hand, the backup who could step in when needed, a mentor, a stabilizer. Now, he's clipboard-bound. And while Flacco's professionalism hasn't wavered, he's still mentoring Sanders, sitting in meetings, breaking down film with grace. Behind the scenes, his agent's already been making calls, exploring exits, looking for a place where Flacco can finish with dignity instead of a headset. Still, he's handling it like a pro, and people have noticed. Multiple sources inside the facility say Flacco's been all class since the announcement. One player even said, "Guys are watching how he's dealing with it. That's leadership too." But not everyone in the QB room is taking it that way. Enter Dillon Gabriel. If Flacco's response has been quiet disappointment, Gabriel's has turned into full-fledged rebellion. Let's rewind. Gabriel wasn't just a third-round pick. He was an investment. A mobile, accurate quarterback with a high-level college resume. Scouting reports praised his intelligence, his mechanics, his quick mind. He was supposed to be a developmental project with upside, not buried, not jumped by a fifth-rounder 7 weeks into camp. So when Sanders was thrust into the spotlight, Gabriel didn't just lose a position battle, he lost a trajectory. Multiple insiders said that Thursday's practice was ice cold. Gabriel showed up noticeably late, said nothing the entire session, participated only when necessary, and then left without speaking to media or coaches. And that wasn't even the worst part. Sources inside the quarterback meeting after the announcement described it as tense bordering on hostile. Heated words exchanged. One coach had to interrupt the energy. According to reports, Gabriel muttered something under his breath, followed by a sarcastic laugh as the depth chart was revealed. Now, no punches thrown, no outbursts. But the message? Clear. He felt blindsided, and maybe even betrayed. And fair or not, he has a case. His college stat line dwarfed Sanders. His preseason reads were clean. He made throws. He kept to his assignments. He showed growth. So, why was he ignored in favor of a late-round pick with more social media buzz than institutional backing? Some inside the building believe this wasn't a decision made on tape. It was made on marketing. That when ownership realized who moved jerseys and who scored clicks, football performance suddenly stopped being the only factor. Now, the conspiracy theories have taken root. And it's not just inside Cleveland. Agents across the league are watching. Players on rookie deals are whispering. Did Cleveland just open a dangerous floodgate where fan hype and business value override competition altogether? Because once you go public with this kind of high-stakes plunge, you can't reverse it quietly. This isn't a player being given a shot. This is a franchise betting its entire identity on one guy, overnight. And within the team, that changes more than the roster. It changes relationships, power structures, loyalty. Suddenly, every player has to pick a side. Support the new QB train that ownership is all in on, or stand behind the process you feel was broken. It's politics wrapped in playbooks. But here's the twist. Despite all the tension, Sanders himself hasn't flinched, not once. He's made no victory lap, issued no cryptic tweets, spoken no drama into existence. He's gone right back to work. Players say he's still the first one in, still staying late, still asking the unglamorous questions at film sessions. One coach even said, he's acting like he still hasn't won the job. That's what's winning guys over. And maybe that's why this might actually work. Because even in chaos, even in fractured rooms, teams can unify around someone who shows up and earns it every single day. But make no mistake, the locker room still isn't whole. At least not yet. There are wounds, split loyalties, awkward glances, whispers. Flacco is too respected to be dismissed. Gabriel is too young to be discarded. Sanders is too important to be questioned. And the stakes only rising. Because everything that happens next, from practice reps to post-game interviews, will be viewed through one lens. Was this locker room ready to follow Sanders, or were they just too tired to keep fighting for someone else? Only one way to find out. Forget the locker room drama for a second. Because for all the chaos surrounding Sanders' sudden rise, the truth is, his play on the field might have earned him the job anyway. While the storyline has focused on politics, pressure, and PR, the numbers paint a very different picture. And they're loud. In just a handful of preseason appearances, Sanders completed nearly 68% of his passes. His touchdown to interception ratio, one of the best among rookies this August. His quarterback rating, quietly sitting above several active NFL starters from last season. And that's just what shows up in the box score, because if you actually watch the snaps, the throws, the movement, the decisions, you saw something that stats can't fully explain: command. Sanders doesn't look like a fifth-rounder fighting for scraps. He plays like someone who knows the entire system already belongs to him. His pocket presence? Calm, clean. His release? Fast but never rushed. His accuracy? Impressive, especially on timing-based throws where rookie QBs usually struggle. But here's where it gets interesting. His biggest impact wasn't what he did with the ball. It was what he did to everyone else around him. Receivers ran routes with more urgency when he was under center. Separation increased. The offensive line, often criticized for inconsistency, suddenly blocked with more sync and tenacity. And the run game? Weirdly sharper. Because defensive fronts weren't crashing the box, they were hesitating, respecting Sanders' dual-threat ability. That hesitation, those milliseconds, created lanes that weren't there with Gabriel or Flacco. Why? Because defenders knew if Sanders broke contain, he wasn't sliding 3 yards for safety. He was carving up secondaries with speed. In fact, multiple defensive backups interviewed after scrimmages said the same thing. You can't relax, he's unpredictable. But unpredictability isn't always a compliment when it comes to young quarterbacks. So let's go beyond the highlights. What really separates Sanders, according to insiders, is his decision-making speed. Coaches clock what's called time to trigger, measuring how quickly a QB identifies a throw and commits to it. Sanders' numbers? Way ahead of the developmental curve. But maybe the most telling stat, one not found on ESPN graphics or next-gen dashboards, completion percentage under pressure. Sanders remains poised when the pocket collapses, steps up, slides, extends plays without running backwards. A rare trait. Most rookies panic. Sanders processes. And once again, it's not just the numbers, it's how they feel. There's this old school belief in football. The game either speeds up for you or slows down around you. And for Sanders, everything seems like it's in slow motion. He's seeing the field, processing disguises, manipulating safeties with his eyes, selling pump fakes that actually freeze defenders. These aren't accidental, even veterans struggle with these details. So the question becomes, if the game already looks slow for him now, what happens when he actually hits real NFL speed with the full playbook? Because here's what no one's talking about. Sanders hasn't even been given the full system yet. Van Pelt and Stefanski have admitted publicly they're introducing the offense in layers, easing him into decision trees, building confidence, and monitoring stress indicators. Imagine you're watching a trailer in HD. But the full movie? It's still in 4K, waiting. And yet, even in a limited sample size, the signs are encouraging. Fact, explosive play frequency increased dramatically with Sanders in control. 15-yard throws, 20-yard scrambles, seam routes in stride down the middle. These weren't safe screens or dink and dunk dump-offs. These were vertical strikes, momentum plays, chain movers, energy igniters. And those moments matter more than people realize. Because on losing teams, and let's be real, Cleveland's been one for a while, those momentum plays are rare. Whole games go by in silence. Sanders brought noise. Still, to be fair, none of this guarantees long-term success. Preseason dominance has fooled teams before. Just ask Jets fans about Christian Hackenberg. Ask Broncos fans about Paxton Lynch. Plenty of quarterbacks have looked good in August and vanished by October. But Sanders feels different, and not because of hype, because of how he wins. He doesn't rely on broken plays. He doesn't need perfect conditions. He's not manufacturing flash for the cameras. He's surgical when necessary, scrappy when it's called for, and steady in between. And all that, it's confirmed by one key group, the defense. Cleveland's own corners and safeties, the guys tasked with stopping Sanders in camp, haven't been shy. One veteran defensive back said this week, "He forces you to discipline your eyes. If you cheat a single step, it's over." Another, "He's already better in the red zone than most guys I've played against in camp." You can't fake that kind of respect, not from players who see through hype faster than anyone. So while the media spins Sanders as a product of ownership interference and ticket sales pressure, the plays tell a quiet truth. He earned the job, maybe not the way it usually happens, maybe faster than most would have liked, but between the stats, the leadership, the command, and the production, there's only one question left. If this is just the starting point for Sanders, what does the next level look like? And maybe more importantly, can Cleveland handle it? This wasn't just a quarterback switch. It was a full-blown identity shift for the Cleveland Browns. From the press conference to the press releases, from the locker room to the league office, everything changed the moment Sanders became QB1. Overnight, the entire organization pivoted. The Browns weren't just reshuffling their depth chart, they were rebranding their franchise. You could see it in the marketing. Immediately. Social media accounts that hadn't posted a quarterback highlight in months suddenly featured back-to-back Sanders clips. The team's website had a homepage redesign within 24 hours. Front and center? Sanders in full uniform, number 2, drenched in spotlight, commercial shoots were reportedly rushed, radio promotions recorded, TV producers scrambling to adapt coverage, media kits that had Flacco and Gabriel on one sheet got shredded and rewritten. Sanders wasn't Plan B, he became the brand. And the fans responded with the kind of energy this team hadn't seen since, well, maybe ever. Season ticket sales spiked, merchandise sold out, secondary ticket markets exploded. Preseason seats that usually went for $14 sold for triple digits. One ticket broker said it was the biggest single-day surge for a non-playoff Browns game in the secondary market's history. By every metric that matters to ownership, excitement, engagement, economics, Sanders delivered before even playing a meaningful down. And that's exactly what makes this so dangerous. Because Cleveland didn't just bet on a kid with potential. They attached the entire soul of the franchise to a fifth-round rookie who hasn't even faced a first-team defense for 4 straight quarters yet. This isn't a calculated progression. It's a gamble. And not the kind you recover from quietly if it goes wrong. Because the Browns, consciously or not, triggered a full-scale quarterback reset, one that discards patience, skips development, and sells hope immediately. That kind of story sells fast. But if it collapses, it burns everything with it. Look around the league. You don't see marketing departments flipping identity mid-preseason. You don't see opposing coaches altering their week 1 prep based on one rookie's splash. Unless they view that rookie as the start of something serious. And that's the bind Cleveland has created for itself. In committing to the hype, they've eliminated the middle ground. There's no more, let's see how it goes. No, maybe we ease him in. No, give it a few weeks. Nope. Now every pass Sanders throws will be analyzed like it's a playoff game. Every incompletion will be questioned. Every misread will be politicized. That's the price of building an empire before you've even broken ground. But here's the real twist. This wasn't just a football decision. It was a financial resurrection plan. Let's be honest, Cleveland needed a win. Any kind of win. A franchise drowning in controversy over the last several seasons. Declining attendance. Declining culture. A fractured locker room. A black hole of public trust. And then Sanders happened. Charismatic, marketable, electrifying. The son of a football legend. Social media gold. Camera-friendly. Fan-approved. In other words, everything the Browns haven't been for years. Suddenly, Cleveland became cool? And for a franchise that spent decades as the NFL's cautionary tale, that shift hits harder than any touchdown pass. Sanders didn't just revive the QB room, he revived the entire franchise's narrative. National media took notice. ESPN floated special coverage. Outlets overseas reached out about international broadcasting. Fox Sports restructured their Saturday pre-game rundown to include a Sanders spotlight. NFL Network sent 2 crews, for a preseason game. But for all the attention, all the momentum, and all the belief, this still might not work. And that's the reality making everyone at Team HQ lose sleep. Because hope, unlike wins, is fragile. If Sanders throws 2 picks on Saturday, the wind shifts again. If he looks overwhelmed, the media pivots. If the Browns start 0-2 with him at the helm, those sponsors will stop calling. The headlines will change, from new era in Cleveland to just another bust-wearing number 2. And there's no PR strategy for that, no graphics package, no hype video, no jersey discount code that erases disappointment when the dream falls apart. That's what makes this the biggest gamble the Cleveland Browns have made in 20 years. Not because of who Sanders is, but because of what they've already made him represent. A new identity, a new hope, a new economy, a new culture. That's a lot of weight for one rookie to carry in a preseason game. But maybe, just maybe, that's the point. Maybe the Browns finally got tired of waiting, because for so many years, the story has been the same. Take a quarterback, let him learn behind a veteran, wait for a few years, add pieces around him, Flip him if it doesn't work. Repeat. That slow approach? It's failed them a dozen times, so now they're flipping the script. They're leaning into the chaos, letting go of tradition, betting not on pedigree, but on presence, on feel, on spark. It's not how dynasties are usually built, but it is how revolutions begin. The old Browns waited. The old Browns hesitated. The old Browns played it safe. This version, apparently they're done with that. Is that dangerous? Absolutely. But as any Browns fan will tell you, the only thing more dangerous at this point is doing nothing at all. So as Sanders steps onto the field this Saturday, he's not just debuting. He's launching a movement. And whether it ends in a movie or a meltdown, he's already changed Cleveland forever. Hope is a beautiful thing. But in the NFL, hope is also a trap. Because the moment a fan base starts to believe, the pressure begins to crush. Sanders didn't just inherit a starting job, he inherited expectation. Often the deadliest opponent a rookie quarterback can face. And now he walks into a stadium full of that weight. Not just from Cleveland, not just from fans, but from the national eye. Every camera pointed, every critic waiting, every snap under the microscope. Let's get something clear. This Saturday isn't just a preseason game anymore. It's an examination, a pressure test, a televised trial. And Sanders is both the subject and the experiment, because the hype's already outpaced the reality. And if you listen closely, you can hear it. A cynical whisper rising around league corners, asking if the Browns rushed it again. There's no soft launch for Sanders, no quiet debut, no low-pressure series just to get his feet wet. He's the show. The Rams know it, the NFL knows it, the media knows it, and so do the Rams coaches. Multiple reports say Los Angeles is preparing exotic looks just for Sanders, defensive packages designed to confuse rookies, loaded with disguised blitzes, rotating safeties, late shifts, all the tricks. One assistant coach allegedly told a reporter, "If we can rattle him in a meaningless game, imagine what the AFC North is going to do in Week 1. They're not playing chess, they're setting traps, and that's before you factor in the weather. Forecasts are calling for possible thunderstorms Saturday afternoon, wind gusts, rain chances. A wet, fast playing field. The exact opposite of what rolling out a young quarterback is supposed to look like. Forget game plans. Mother Nature might force the Browns to scrap them completely. Slippery turf, unpredictable wind, messy snaps, all the small things that turn even great plays into missed opportunities. It's almost cosmic, right? Like the football gods are putting Cleveland's new messiah through a full-scale baptism by fire, only swapping fire for water. And then comes the media surge. This week, multiple national crews arrived early to scout practice. Extra cameras, boom mics crusting the sidelines, national beat writers chasing post-game quotes before kickoff even happens. Journalists are literally rehearsing questions. Producers planning post-game narratives before the game's even played. Graphics packages already lined up, headlines half written. And that's terrifying, because if Sanders has a rough outing, the headlines won't read, "Promising rookie shows growing pains." They'll scream, "Cleveland cracks again." Because that's the reality of momentum. When it's with you, it flies. When it turns, the crash is brutal. And there's another layer here. One nobody's talking about. Every snap Sanders takes and every hit he absorbs increases a risk the Browns cannot afford to ignore. Injury. The reality is, the Browns just invested their entire brand into a rookie quarterback, and at the same time, they're still running a preseason offensive line. That's dangerous. Because while veterans like Joel Bitonio and Wyatt Teller are expected to play, there's a limit to their exposure. One wrong twist, one missed assignment, one free blitzer, and this entire experiment explodes on live television. Sources say the Browns have already enhanced sideline protocols specifically for Sanders. More staff on hand, more medical redundancy, more contingency planning. Why? Because an injury here destroys everything. The city's hope, the ownership's bet, the marketing train, the locker room belief. One awkward landing takes all of that out in under 5 seconds. And that's not even considering the psychological impact of this spotlight. Pressure doesn't just shake confidence, it alters decision-making. A young QB surrounded by hype is more likely to force plays, respond emotionally, or struggle with in-game adversity. And the Rams defense isn't here for the warm welcome. Their goal is simple: expose Sanders under bright lights. Smart defensive minds play not just the man, but the moment. They know that if they can rattle the rookie now, it might not just affect this game. It could set back his confidence for weeks. Because if Sanders doubts himself, just for a second, it changes his reads, his footwork, his rhythm. And in the NFL, that's all it takes. Even the locker room, which currently appears united, isn't bulletproof. Players believed in Sanders because they saw improvement. They felt momentum. But one poor showing, one fumble, one interception, one turnover returned to the house, and suddenly, the whispers come back. Maybe Flacco should have stayed. Maybe Gabriel never had a fair shot. Maybe this wasn't about football at all. And when doubt creeps into the locker room, it spreads faster than any headline. That's why this Saturday matters more than just stats. It's not about putting up 350 yards and 4 touchdowns. It's about managing the moment. Does he protect the ball under pressure? Can he bounce back after mistake? Can he lead the huddle after a 3-and-out? Can he own the field when it's raining, loud, chaotic? That's the actual test. And here's the truth. Sanders knows it, because for all his confidence, all his command, and all the flashes of brilliance we've seen, the quarterback we see on Saturday, that's the version that decides everything. History is full of overhyped rookies who flamed out under the lights, and the NFL doesn't give second chances to guys who fumble first impressions. So yes, this moment is exciting. Yes, it's historic. Yes, Sanders represents something new. But optimism doesn't win games. Preparedness does. Composure does. And performance always speaks louder than PR. The Browns have built the stage. The fans have bought in. The league is now watching. But once that ball is snapped, there's no protecting Sanders with marketing. He's on an island. The wind swirling, the blitz coming, the pressure mounting. And all that's left to determine is one thing. Is this the most inspiring beginning Cleveland has ever seen? Or the most preventable disaster they never stopped from happening? By now, you've heard the numbers, seen the highlights, felt the hype. But what's happening in Cleveland isn't just a quarterback change, it's a cultural earthquake. And the epicenter? QB1, Sanders. Because here's the truth, whether Saturday ends in triumph or disaster, something inside this franchise has already shifted. Walk into the Browns facility today, and it doesn't just look different, it feels different. The hallways, buzzing, meeting rooms, packed early, practice field, intensity turned all the way up. One player said, "It's like we all got plugged back in after a long power outage." That's the Sanders effect, and it's breaking through every wall that's held Cleveland back for the last 20 years. Forget X's and O's. This man has flip-switched the entire emotional infrastructure of the building. Start with the offense. Coaches have already revamped the game plan around Sanders. Van Pelt reportedly developed 2 entirely new package tiers just for him. Not watered-down rookie play sheets. Real packages, run-pass options, layered reads, motion-based deception. Receivers? They're requesting more work. Amari Cooper, a veteran who's earned the right to rest during the preseason, volunteered to play extra snaps in the Rams game. Jerry Jeudy? Same story. They want reps with Sanders. Not because they have to, because they believe those reps matter. The chemistry is developing faster than expected. Sanders talks timing with receivers after every drill, goes through plays twice, walkthroughs at full speed, repetition after repetition, mistakes followed by adjustments, not excuses. And the offensive line, there's real fire now. Pro Bowl guard Joel Bitonio organized a full-line dinner the night the Sanders news broke. The message? We're not just blocking for any rookie, we're protecting the piece this franchise just bet everything on. The result? Energy, urgency, accountability. Even position groups removed from quarterback play have bought in. Tight ends like David Njoku have emphasized route discipline. Running backs are pushing through contact more in practice because when the quarterback raises the standard, everyone else follows. And that trickle-down effect? It's hitting the defense too. Joe Woods, Cleveland's defensive coordinator, reportedly told players, "You're going to get more support than ever this year. Act like it." Translated, we finally have an offense that can take a punch and throw one back. So now, the defense is playing differently, more aggressive, willing to blitz, willing to gamble. Because with Sanders, 3-and-outs don't feel inevitable. Getting the ball back feels worth it now, and players are sensing it. One corner told reporters, "I'm not just playing to get off the field anymore, I'm playing to flip momentum." It sounds small until you realize that kind of attitude can flip entire seasons. Let's be honest, for years, Cleveland football has felt heavy, weighty, joyless, rotating quarterbacks, confused play calls, teams built to survive, not to succeed.